annual conference of the Democratic Labour Party. 1 year has passed since last I addressed you in annual conference. In the year 2012, when I addressed this conference, this auditorium was charged with the expectation that in the not too distant future, a general election would have been called and the Democratic Labour Party would have been required to account for its stewardship over the preceding 5 years. That election was eventually called, after being agitated for day after day, week after week, month after month. And here am I today, 6 months later, addressing you not only as President of the Democratic Labour Party, but as Prime Minister of Barbados. A compelling sense of appropriateness dictates that I thank all of you for the massive demonstration of support which you gave to this party in the 2013 general election. Members of Parliament, our candidates, members of the General Council, members of the Executive Council, our supporters in the field, all rose to the occasion and threw their full weight behind us in a difficult general election campaign, and we triumphed as everyone expected that we should, and as we always felt that we would. So I want to say thanks to all of you who made it possible. I want to say thanks to the parliamentary team that gave me its full support once I became Prime Minister on the 23rd of October 2012, beg your pardon, 2010. And ever since then, I've been able to count on the full support of the members of Parliament, whether in the House of Assembly or in the Senate. We had some unexpected reverses in that general election, and I commiserate with those who were not fortunate enough to be re-elected to the House of Assembly. I speak in particular of a man like George Hudson, who gave every bit of effort he had to the efforts of the government between 2008 and 2013. It is one of the vagaries of politics that after working as hard as he did, he should not be re-elected on February the 21st. Others have known that fate. Errol Barry in 1951, elected. By 1956, he lost. But he came back and triumphed and rose to the top of Barbadian politics, and is still planted firmly in the minds and in the expectations, and of course in the affections of the people of this country. So George and Dr. Esteban Sakou, one of the brightest stars in our firmament as well, Kenny Best, Patrick Todd, they fell in battle, but they have forfeited none of the respect which we had for them, and they certainly forfeited none of the support which we will give to them in their efforts to be re-elected to the House of Assembly. Over the past year, some have fallen in another kind of battle, the battle for life. We lost some of our strongest stalwarts in this organization over the last 12 months. And I really want to take this opportunity to remember them this morning with profound gratitude for the contribution they've made to the Democratic Labour Party for as long as they helped to carry our banner. I speak, for example, of Comrade Marva Hoyt of the constituency of St. Andrew, Comrade Keith Allen, also of the constituency of St. Andrew, Comrade Carol Austin of St. Michael East, Comrade Montel Maynard, also of St. Michael East, Comrade Pamela Appley of St. Michael South, Comrade George Fraser of St. Michael Northwest, St. Michael West, Comrade Alistair Green of St. Michael West Central, Comrade Carmen Lovell of the constituency of St. John, a stalwart of many years, Comrade Neville Bailey, Comrade George Brown, St. Michael West Central, of course the redoubtable Comrade Branford Mayhew Tate. All of these fell in the battle for life over the last 12 months. We remember them today with profound gratitude and pray that light perpetual will shine upon them. Of course, we take this opportunity to extend condolences once again to Comrade John Boyce and his family on the passing of his mother, the late Dorothy Adele Boyce. We thank her not only for the support she's given to this party over the years, but we thank her too for giving us John. Now, comrades, as I said earlier, election 2013 was fought and won. When it was being agitated for, I kept saying to those who were agitating for it, just take it easy. An election is going to be called, it is going to be fought, and somebody is going to win, and somebody is going to lose. But the agitation continued. When I dared to go past the 15th of January before he called an election, there were wild and uncontrolled allegations that I was trying to hold on to power because we were so certain that we were going to lose. I was even accused of trying to subvert the Constitution of Barbados. When the election was called and the date fixed for the 21st of February, those who were agitating for it were still not ready. And as I said on the morning when we went to pay our deposits, I understood why they were not ready. Because while we were ready to fight the 2013 general election, they were busying themselves getting ready to fight the 2008 general election. Well, the 2013 general election is over. They fought the 2008 one on February the 21st. We were fighting the 2013 one. And as we look forward now to the 2018 one, they're now getting ready to fight the 2013 one. I wish them luck, but I can promise them no comfort. Great is the Democratic Labour Party, and it will continue to prevail. So since the general election on February the 21st, within 2 months of the general election of February the 21st, you got the impression in Barbados that we had not had an election around here for many years. The opposition party has begun to conduct itself as though an election is still to be called. In fact, they're calling for another election. And of course, in preparation for that election, they're running around saying that they're rubbing shoulders. Barbadians have a very good sense of humor. I have learned that over many years. And you know, about 2 weeks ago, I returned a call to a former client of mine who had called me, as it turned out, to discuss a matter related to the Sanitation Service Authority and some problems she thought she was having with the collection of her garbage. After we disposed of the matter on which she called me, as is my want, I asked her, so is everything all right with you? She said, Mr. Stuart, apart from the arthritis, I am all right. Sometimes I think that this body does not belong to me and I will give it away when the arthritis hits me. I said, well, you know, I'm very sorry to hear that, but I know that from hearing my mother talk about it, I've never had the experience myself. I know that arthritis can be very painful. She said, so tell your girl not to leave me out. I said, I don't understand. She said, well, you see, my arthritis is in my left shoulder. And I understand that Miss Motley is walking around rubbing people's shoulders. I want mine rubbed too. I did exactly what you just did. I laughed uncontrollably. And when I regained my composure and I thought it was over, she said, but look, tell her when she's coming to call before because I want to make sure my husband is at home. So, even the average Barbadian can see through what is going on now and is able to get a good laugh out of it. But the election has been fought and won. We did not win it by chicanery. We did not win it by going up there and promising the earth and the sky to people, promising things that we could not deliver. We won it on a very simple campaign. We won it on the basis of being frank and open with the people of Barbados. We made it clear that the world was going through a very difficult period. But that in spite of that difficult period, a period which was affecting some of the richest and most eminently resourced countries in the world, we were holding our own. We explained that we were facing challenges, but that in spite of those challenges, we were holding our own. And what other countries were suffering, we were managing to avert because we were keeping our eyes on the ball and making sure that things in Barbados did not spin out of control. We promised the Barbados in our manifesto that was socially balanced, economically viable, environmentally sound, and characterized by good and transparent governance. At no time during the campaign, or in any period leading up to it, did we represent to the people of Barbados that things were good in spite of what was going on elsewhere in the world. We said we were holding our own in spite of what was going on in the world, and that we were pursuing policies, the objective of which was to keep as many people as possible employed until this dark cloud of economic uncertainty dissipated and passed away. That was the case of the Democratic Labour Party. It was not a case that was suddenly arrived at. Right through the period when we were doing our constituency council meetings, constituency conferences, I was saying it, and other speakers were saying it, letting people know that we were living in difficult times. We had to be very careful, but that the government was trying its best to pursue policies that would not disrupt the households of Barbados and would not bring undue inconvenience or hardship to the businesses of this country. That's what we did. The people took us at our word, they followed us in their thousands, and they gave us a renewed mandate to preside over their destiny for the next 5 years. When we were saying that we were holding our own, we meant something in particular. We meant that the foreign reserves of Barbados continued to be healthy and that we could afford to pay for the imports upon which we so heavily relied rather comfortably, because the foreign reserves that were flowing in adequately covered the imports that we had to pay for. We acknowledged that we were running a larger than usual fiscal deficit. In other words, that we were spending a little more than we were earning locally. But we explained that on the basis that when there's a downturn and you want to keep as many people as possible employed and you want to maintain services at a certain level, it is sometimes necessary to do that and of course make up the shortfall by borrowing, sometimes by taxation, but of course in this case taxation was not an obvious option. And that state of affairs continued on that they did not have the foreign currency, forcing these people who had bills to pay overseas, who had to pay for imports, to draw on the reserves of the Central Bank of Barbados. Now, once you get to that stage, you know that something has changed. And the Central Bank of Barbados wisely and responsibly advised us to sit up and take note. Wisely told us that we were going to have to take some steps to administer some corrections to the economy of Barbados, since this situation could not be allowed to get out of hand. The Minister of Finance, Freundel, who, let me make it very clear, contrary to all that people in the opposition might expect, continues to have my fullest confidence. Because he's a hard-working and conscientious minister, and he understands what he's doing, and he has nothing but the best interests of Barbados at heart. And that is what I expect of any minister of the government, especially the Minister of Finance. So he and I put heads together, along with other members of the cabinet, and we determined that we were not going to allow this situation to get out of hand. We started a process of wide consultation, getting the views of as many people, as many interest groups as possible, so that when we came to any conclusions, those conclusions would be reflective of the input of all the sectors and groups likely to be affected by any decisions that we took. It was difficult and excruciating work because we were dealing with difficult circumstances, we were dealing with a difficult economic situation, and we were dealing with a society that had become so accustomed to having things easy that it was not going to be a cakewalk to get them to accept that some fundamental changes had to be made. But the Minister of Finance and the members of the Cabinet rose to the occasion and we conducted those consultations. I am proud of the men and women in the Cabinet of Barbados, but when I've seen their willingness to go beyond the call of duty to ensure that Barbados is put right, it lets me know that the faith of the people of Barbados is not being betrayed. You have elected an admirable group of politicians to preside over your destiny. Eventually, after all the consultations were over, we came to some conclusions. Those conclusions we came to were based on the diagnosis of the ailment with which we were supposed to be dealing. There were problems of debt. We were borrowing money to pay bills on a monthly basis. There were problems of deficit. We had to borrow that money because we were spending more than we were earning in order to keep people employed and to maintain services at the transport board and the hospital and the job service and elsewhere. And then there was the issue of our foreign reserves. And the foreign reserves became relevant because there was also a balance of payment challenge. The current account of the balance of payment began to show some nervousness as we were no longer adequately covering the cost of our imports into this country. Last Tuesday, the Minister of Finance produced for the country the product of all of our efforts and our deliberations. The Cabinet had discussed all of those policies before, came to the conclusion after some hard bargaining that we had no choice but to pursue certain courses of action. Everybody in the Cabinet room was on board in respect of what we were going to do. And everybody is still on board in respect of what we have determined we have to do. The Minister of Finance delivered the financial statement and budgetary proposals last Tuesday afternoon. By Wednesday evening, the opposition, in accordance with our parliamentary tradition, was asked to reply. And the leader of the opposition, of course, did that reply. As I have said over and over again, and I said it as recently as Thursday night in the debate, I don't expect any opposition party to stand up and praise any government for its budget. It just does not happen. It has never happened before. We expect criticism of what we do because this is a parliamentary democracy based on Westminster principles. And as long ago as the 19th century, Sir William Harcourt, a British thinker, said that the role of an opposition is to oppose and to oppose and to oppose again. So we understand that. We sat in opposition as well, and when we were there, we did not behave any differently, except that we tried to be as responsible in our criticisms as possible. On Tuesday evening, comrades and friends, we had from the leader of the opposition an admixture of English, varnish, and rubbish. You would have got the impression, listening to her on Wednesday afternoon, that all was well in Barbados, and that a spiteful government had come to Parliament to undo all the good that Barbados had been able to do over a long number of years. She made it very clear that she didn't want to hear anything about what is going on in the world outside. We don't live in Spain, we don't live in Greece. That she was concerned with what is happening in Barbados. Doesn't matter to her that the economy of the United Kingdom is still under immense pressure, and that United Kingdom is one of our, in fact, it's our primary source market for tourists. The Chancellor of the British Exchequer and those around him heaved a sigh of relief, and it seemed as though applause erupted all across England when they were able to know that they were going to get some growth of about 0.6% in the first half of this year. In the United States of America, our second largest source market for tourism, challenges continue. President Obama is trying to get American businesses to come back home, pay taxes at home, and create jobs at home. The British Prime Minister is trying to get offshore investors in places like Barbados and other parts of this region to come back home, pay taxes at home, and help the economy there to rebound and to regain its viability and so on. And foreign capital inflows into this country have been quite tepid over the last 5 years as a result of the global economic situation. But Ms. Motley is not interested in that. Here in the Caribbean, I sat in a caucus of the heads of government at the last heads of government meeting in Trinidad and Tobago. We sat for a whole day in caucus discussing the economies of this region. And I did not hear one upbeat story. It was a choice between pain and more pain. But the impression is being given that somehow all is wrong with Barbados and all is well with the remainder of the world. Not true. So we listened to the debate on Wednesday evening, we listened to the opposition, and we realized what we were up against. But I want to say this. By Thursday night, when the Minister of Finance was winding up that debate, the Democratic Labour Party in Parliament had routed the opposition and put them to flight. Our problems of debt and deficit and the foreign reserve challenges and so on have not disappeared as a result of what happened on Thursday night. We still have serious challenges to face in this country. In fact, the challenges have now begun. As of tomorrow, when I go to my office, as of tomorrow when the cabinet goes back to its business, the work has begun. The Minister of Finance has put in place, with the agreement of the cabinet, a set of programs and policies to be pursued, And as Prime Minister, I am going to make sure that the phrase implementation deficit becomes something of the distant past, because I am going to make sure that what we have promised to do, we are able to perform, because people do what they are supposed to do. And don't get the impression, comrades and friends, that this phrase implementation, or this word implementation, is some new word. In quite a few of Prime Minister Arthur's budgetary proposals, he had to use the word as well, because he had the same challenges. But crunch time has come, and we have to make sure that the business of the government and the objectives of the country are achieved. The Ministry of Public Works, under Minister Michael Lashley, has some work to do. I spoke to Minister Lashley yesterday morning, and he is as gung-ho about the work to be done at NCW as he was when he was Minister of Housing and Land. A lot of work is to be done in the Ministry of the Environment by Dr. Dennis Lowe to achieve a number of objectives which we have set ourselves in the area of the management of our solid waste and the generation of energy and so on. Dennis Lowe and I sat together sometime on Thursday, and he is ready for the task at hand. In fact, he was always ready for the task at hand, but the clarion call that went out from the Minister of Finance on Tuesday afternoon has only renewed that conviction. Minister John Boyce at the Ministry of Health is committed to guarding the gains registered at the Ministry of Health under his predecessor, Don Billings, and to make sure that we never get to the stage again where our average Barbadian has to be afraid to get sick because of what fate might await him at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And that is not apocryphal. Only over the weekend, this weekend, my sister was reminding me of the day in 2006 when the doctor at 6 Roads, Dr. Ramendar, told my mother that he was going to recommend her to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And she exclaimed, "Why are you going to send me there? You're sending me there to die now?" And I had to take the decision to have her committed to Bayview. That was where the Queen Elizabeth Hospital was under the Barbados Labour Party. Don Billings saw to that, brought it back to a state of respectability and reliability that John Boyce is now committed to preserve it and protect it. Our flagship over the period 2008 to 2013 was in the area of housing. Michael Ashley did some excellent work there, and Dennis Kelman is laying the foundations now for a grand takeoff in the area of housing to make sure that every last person in this country has a chance at decent and affordable housing. And I could go on and on and on. We have plans for the energy sector. I am Minister with overall responsibility for energy, but Senator Darcy Boyce is my incorrigible and loyal ally in that regard. And we are in the process of putting the energy sector on a new platform. When Parliament resumes after the recess, we are going to be piloting through Parliament amendments to the Electric Light and Power Act to create a new regime for the generation of energy and renewable energy in Barbados. So this is not a government that is asleep. Don Billings, Minister with responsibility for international business, has come face to face with the challenges facing that sector all across the world. The international business sector is facing fresh challenges from the larger countries, the onshore countries the countries from which the offshore investment comes. Prime Minister David Cameron just hosted the G8 in Ireland, and the agenda item that determined what that conference was going to be discussing all had to do with the offshore sector. And I've been reading recently that the campaign against the sector has been continuing. In fact, in a recent publication of a very prestigious magazine, the offshore sector in our part of the world, has been described as sunny places for shady people. The slander against the sector is continuing because the onshore countries, we are the offshore ones, the onshore ones want their business to come back home so that the people who invest with us or who do business from Barbados can be paying taxes at home rather than paying lower taxes here. So these are the challenges that we are facing. The United States of America has passed a Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, more familiarly called the FATCA. And the whole purpose of that legislation is to get our financial institutions to share information with the American Treasury so that they're always on top of how much money Americans have invested here in our banking system and wherever else they may have it. These are the challenges which, as a small country, we are facing. These challenges are no different from the ones that Aaron Barrow faced when he led this country in independence. They're no different from the ones that Tom Adams faced when he presided over the destiny of this country. They're certainly no different from the ones that Erskine Sandiford faced in the early 90s when he was Prime Minister. No different from the ones that Oinata faced after the 2001 events in the United States of America. No different from what David Thompson faced when he became Prime Minister on the 16th of January 2008. And the only difference, though, of course, is that our difficulties have lasted longer than the difficulties faced by any previous Prime Minister of Barbados. Because the crisis through which the world is now passing is the most serious crisis the world has seen in well nigh 100 years. But we are not daunted. We are committed to the cause of ensuring that Barbados remains viable, its economy remains viable, that it remains socially balanced, that it remains environmentally sound, and that good and transparent governance is practiced. But when you listen to the other side, you get the impression that there is some magic wand somewhere that can be just wielded or waved and all things will be put right. Just utter some incantation, some abracadabra, and all will be well. If that were so, President Obama would know it. If that were so, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, would know it. If that were so, the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, would know it. If that were so, other Prime Ministers in the Caribbean would have heard about it as well. This is a difficult, a stubborn crisis, and the people of Barbados have to see it through, using that age-old and well-known resilience that has distinguished this company over the years. And it is on that the cabinet over which I preside counts as from day to day we try to deal with these challenges. But since the opposition party could not credibly persuade the country on matters related to the economy, they decided that they would look for what I hear popularly called low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit for which they look was the University of the West Indies at Cape Town. The government of Barbados, in the package of proposals introduced to Parliament on Tuesday, committed itself to continuing to pay the economic cost of Barbadian students being educated at the Cape Town campus of the University of the West Indies, but said that because of the cost, the rising costs at the university, we are going to ask students to contribute their tuition fees. All hell has broken out in the corridors of the Barbados Labour Party. The party that wanted to lock up Barrow is now defending Barrow, basically claiming that we, the wild boys and the goon squad, as they call them, had come in and were now trying to destroy Barrow's legacy. And they've now appointed themselves those who have come to cleanse Barbados of all of its present defilement. And by defilement I mean the Democratic Labour Party. And I use that word with very good reason. Because after the 2008 election, about 2 weeks after the 2008 election, when they were just recovering from the fact that the mighty had fallen, in the number 1 Supreme Court of Barbados, a senior Barbados Labour Party lawyer stood up. These people talk and they don't even know who they're talking to, and confidently predicted that the Democratic Labour Party was not going to last. And when he was asked, why do you say that? He said, you see, the distinction between the Democratic Labour Party and the Barbados Labour Party is that the Democratic Labour Party does not have any people of class. That is what they believe. That is why I shudder to think, what would have been the state of public administration in Barbados if they had won the last election? We would have had about 4 attorneys general because 4 different persons were promised the office of attorney general. We would have had 2 governors of the central bank. Dr. Worrell was supposed to be humiliated, and he would be replaced by the 2 persons who were promised the governorship of the central bank. The present governor general, who they have always said from the time he was a judge, had no class, he was going to be removed, and the 3 persons they promised that to would all be marching up the government house as well. Fortunately, we would only have had 1 High Commissioner to London, the one who was promised a knighthood, and that diplomatic plum. But we are supposed to have no class. That is why David Thompson, my predecessor, stood up in Parliament on more than 1 occasion and excoriated the Barbados Labour Party for that view, because he said that you all talk as though we are last class people. They have class, we have none. They've always believed that. So we were not going to last. We have lasted, and we've been re-elected now, and they can't take it. So their campaign against us has started again. I am Minister of National Security of Barbados, and I take umbrage at the fact that within about 2 weeks of the 2013 general election, members of the Royal Barbados Police Force were being told that they had to be prepared for riots in Barbados. They were being told so by some of their leaders. And when they inquired about why riots, they were being told because there was no change of government. I am the Minister of National Security, And nobody came to me to tell me that the national security of Barbados was under threat. But people in the Royal Barbados Police Force were being told within about 2 weeks of their election in 2013 that they got to prepare for riots. And you can see why they were being told that, because of the shoulder rubbing and the up and down and the jet skiing that has been taking place in Barbados. But I don't talk until I have to. I get criticized for not talking. But I know something that they don't know. The majority of voters in Barbados are women. And I have not yet come across any woman in my life who likes a man that talks too much. All the time and turning people away from them. Let them continue talking. When you open your mouth to talk, you have something to say. So the new target of their venom, or one of the new targets of their venom, is now the Minister of Education. Of course, a continuing target is the Minister of Finance, and if you know my status already. Because we have broken a sacred rule, violated a sacred covenant in asking students at the University of the West Indies to contribute their tuition fees to their education at that noble institution. Now let me make it very clear. The Democratic Labour Party as a party and the Democratic Labour Party in government is not at war with the Cahill campus of the University of the West Indies. Interests of the University of the West Indies at Cahill, we are committed to that university achieving the objectives which it has set itself. Let that be made very clear. It could not be otherwise, because we are the people who in 1963 got it going in the first place. It started down at the harbour, and it was our Barrow who got in an airplane and flew over where it is located now, and chose that land for the siting of the Cahill campus of the University of the West Indies. We are committed to tertiary education in Barbados. There is no political party in Barbados whose record equals far less surpasses the record of the Democratic Labour Party when it comes to education. We have to face reality. We can't keep our gaze fixed in cloud cuckoo land. Our gaze has to be in the real world of time and space. And that is where the present dispute has arisen. First of all, let me explode a myth that has been taking root in this society. You see, if you don't have any respect for people, you wouldn't tell them the truth. And that's the problem with the Barbados Labour Party. Because they underestimate everybody's intelligence, they feel that you can run anything past them and, as it were, trick them just to get their support and their confidence. Look, it is not true that fee paying by Barbadian students was introduced in the House of Assembly for the first time on Tuesday afternoon when the Minister of Finance delivered his budget. Even as he spoke, there were people in Barbados, students in Barbados, who had been paying their tuition fees at the Cable campus of the University of the West Indies as long ago as the year 2003. From then until now, students at the Cable campus of the University of the West Indies have been paying, contributing their tuition fees to their education. You know the difference between Chris Sinclair and the Barbados Labour Party? He dared to rip it into the open. But that decision of 2003-2004 was taken by stealth. That was Nicodemus coming by night. At the University of the West Indies at Cable, if you want to do a second undergraduate degree, or if you want to do a master's degree, which the Ministry of Education is not disposed to sponsor because the subject matter of what you're studying is not considered to be a developmental priority, you have to finance your own education at Cable. I know what I'm talking about. I have friends who have had to do it. It is not true to say that for the first time from 2014, Barbadian students will have to pay their tuition fees. It has been happening since 2003. But we made it public. We made public what we had in mind to do, while they kept their secret. And that is the difference between the two organizations. We confronted the people on the issue, and we are still confronting the people on the issue, because if the people of Barbados know of a different way to achieve the objectives which we want to achieve, which is cutting down on the transfers we have to do to Cable so that we have money to devote to our other tertiary institutions, the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic and the Barbados Community College, and so that we can reinforce our secondary schools and our primary schools and our nursery schools. If they know of a different way, to reduce our fiscal deficit, let us know. We are not so hidebound and so hard-nosed that if we hear a suggestion that makes sense, that would make life easier for everybody, that we wouldn't accept it. But no suggestion has been forthcoming, because they have none. They're trying to give you the impression that they have something up their sleeve. All they have up their sleeve are sweaty armpits. Nothing else. So that's the first myth that I want to dismantle. Payment by Barbadian students for their education at Cable is now about 1 decade old. It was not always so. I've told my own story. I have an anecdote. When I did my Bachelor of Arts degree between 1971 and 1975, 2 years part-time and 2 full, the taxpayers funded. When I did my Bachelor of Laws degree, in 3 years, the taxpayers funded. When I was not able to go off to Newton Law School because I had no money, I decided that I was not going to waste the time. I went and I did a Master of Laws degree, and the taxpayers funded it. So I know of the days when the taxpayers funded more than one degree for a student. It happened to me. It does not happen now, because that policy has been changed, and it was not changed by the Democratic Labour Party. It was changed by stealth by the Barbados Labour Party while it was in office. And you get all this excitement around the place as though something new is happening. That when you were asleep, some evil spirits moved in and are trying to turn the world upside down. Not true. And what worries me is that they know it is not true. But their relationship with the truth is so fragile that they're able to say these things and keep a straight face. Look, in 1968, 45 years ago, 1968, 45 years ago, Errol Barrow, addressing a graduation ceremony at the KFL campus of the University of the West Indies, warned that university costs were rising rapidly and putting undue pressure on regional governments 45 years ago. He said, expansion at the university, desirable as it may be, has to be properly planned, because governments have a difficult task of persuading the people in their respective countries to fork out more and more money by way of taxes and other inputs to pay for the finance these enterprises. 45 years ago. But he did go on to say that governments, because they needed to get a core of skilled and trained personnel to develop these countries, could not afford not to finance these costs and could only curtail them when it was thought it was no longer necessary. 45 years ago. And when Errol Barrow was talking, it took $2,700 to educate a Barbadian student here at KFL. And the Barbados Labour Party will now give the impression that this issue is something new. The reason why the policy was put in place in 2003, 2004, for persons to pay for a second undergraduate degree and for any masters that the Ministry of Education was unwilling to sponsor. The reason for that was that the Barbados Labour Party recognized as far back as then that these costs were spinning out of control as well. But they would have to believe that there's another solution. Let me just share a little something with you here. Sir Alan Fields chaired a consultative commission for program development and design sometime around the year 2006, I think. Looking at the University of the West Indies at KFL. This is the report. This is the report. Sir Alan Fields' report makes the following point on the issue of widening access to university education at Cape. I am quoting. He said the commitment of Professor Beckles to having a graduate in every household in Barbados and to an increased enrollment of 15,000 students by the year 2015 should be considered in the light of the need to accelerate the pace of the region's human resource development. However, the Commission believes that there is need to take into consideration the very real fear that increasing the number of students entering the KFA campus will unduly strain the institution's resources and inevitably lower the quality of its programs. He said, and there is too the fear articulated in the OECS that this dramatic increase in Barbadian enrollment, unless accompanied by corresponding measures to broaden sub-regional access, could unintentionally result in the Barbadianization of the KFA campus of the University of the West Indies. The gospel according to Alan Pease and his commission. They recognize it. A commitment of 15,000 students at KFA by the year 2015, a commitment to the ideal of a graduate in every household, quite noble. I would like to see every single Barbadian get access to tertiary education. It is a desirable thing. That is why the KFA campus is there. That's why the Democratic Labour Party built the Barbados Community College. That's why we built the Samuel Jackman Preston Polytechnic. We are responsible for all three because we believe in tertiary education. So we would like to see as many people as possible take advantage of the opportunities being offered. But the caution of Sir Alan Pease's commission has to be hearkened. He said, the commission believes that there is need to take into consideration the very real fear that increasing the number of students entering the KFA campus will unduly strain the institution's resources and inevitably lower the quality of its programs. You can't want it clearer than that. But I don't believe whatever else Sir Alan Pease may be capable of, I don't believe he will deny this. In fact, right through the report, there are concerns about quality. The report makes the point that while quantity is important, we have to make sure that in our pursuit of quantity, we do not lose sight of the need for continually high standards of performance. Listen to this. Page 13 of the same report. Cross-cutting issues, English language proficiency. He said the magnitude of the task facing the UWI is reflected in Table 6. Results of the English language proficiency test 2006, which shows that 828 individuals from Anguilla, Antigua, Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and Grenadines sat the English language proficiency test. This test is mandatory for all applicants to the UWI who did not obtain one of the following: a grade 1 in CXC, general proficiency in English A, a grade A in GCE or level English language, a grade 1 in Cape Communication Studies, or a grade A or B in the GCE general paper. Of these 828 students that took the exam, 472 persons, or 57%, failed. And were therefore required, to listen to this, were therefore required to take and to pass the remedial self-financing, at the paper itself, fundamentals of written English, before advancing to the university's level 1 foundation courses in English. 828 students took the exam. 57% failed. When you hear us talking about low matriculation and so on, that is what we're talking about. So while the ideal, I respect the ideal of trying to get a graduate in every household and trying to get 15,000 people at the university by 2015 may be desirable. There are certain facts which we have to face. The resources available to the University of the West Indies at KFL have to be able to support what the university is trying to do. But I go further, and I'm not going to keep you very much longer. I have before me a paper done by 2 officials of the Central Bank of Barbados. The paper is entitled An Analysis of Barbadian Student Enrollment at the University of the West Indies KFL campus and the cost to the Barbadian government. Now,